The following episode might contain sensitive content that you might not be comfortable listening to. This will include topics such as self-harm, suicide, alcoholism. If any of these things or anything related might disturb you, please proceed with caution or click off the video now. What makes you so afraid of the future? Is it the fear of not knowing what to do? Is it the fear of losing the people close to you? Is it just the general uncertainty of it all? Hello, my name is Haze, and welcome back to yet another episode of the Only Rainy Days podcast. And today, from the title, I'm probably not going to change it from what I have in my notes. I've written down, I'm scared. And that's my answer to that question from earlier. I'm scared about the future. I know why, but at the same time, I can't ration out why I'm so afraid of the future. But there's just something about the uncertainty of it all, and not just the uncertainty, but the lack of drive and passion that I feel like I have right now is what makes me feel so afraid of the future. Because when I was younger, up to about high school, which I guess high school is when you really start to have a grasp and an idea that what you're doing really does make up your future. But, before then, I wasn't afraid of the future. I would think about it a lot, and I can't recall how many different professions and fields and whatever I supposedly said I was interested in when I was younger. Lots of weird things and things that you would hear from, a kid. Want to be boxer, said a bartender at some point, computer scientist, mathematician. So a lot of things, and as I kept getting older and older, I started to narrow it down a little bit. Then it turned into, I want to go into computer science or entrepreneurship. Those were the two things that I had on my mind going into high school. And they both stayed true for quite some time. Sophomore year of high school, I got into my first truly legitimate computer science class, just coding. I think it was Java and Python, or one of the two. I don't remember. It's either Java, Python, or C++. And I signed up for the class because I was hyper. I was like, this is exactly what I've been telling myself I've been interested in for the last couple of years. I finally have the chance to do it at an institution that is actually held pretty highly. This will be an amazing experience. So I went into the class pretty hyper because I played around with computer science and I did my own things, self-studied in a couple languages, nothing too serious because I didn't have a grasp of this is what the field actually looks like. So I go into the class, and I think it took about 1 week for me to realize that idea just got shattered. And a week into any class, especially an introductory class, there's not really anything of significance that could be brought up to make you realize oh no, maybe I don't want to actually do this at all. But I think I started to just, once the information got brought up to me and I would see things, especially because my roommate at the time, he took the class and he was showing me what he was doing. I started to get I had an inside look into what the beginning of the beginning looks like to enter this field, because I didn't even have anything in mind that I wanted to do in computer science. I just believed that was what I wanted to do. And just playing around and trying to make introductory projects create a dictionary basically and be able to index it, so feed it 100 words and then be able to call upon it or something like that. I don't remember what the project was, but just looking at things that went into it, immediately I was like, ooh, maybe I should. I got cold feet, but I stayed with it. And then debugging was a whole different nightmare. I don't even want to think about that right now. But by the time that class was over and I passed it, I was like, oh, so I've spent the last 2-3 years kind of in a daze, because I told myself I wanted to get into something, didn't know exactly what it entailed, and quite bluntly, I fucked around and I found out the hard way that wasn't what I wanted to do. But it was still a safe time to figure out that's not what I wanted to do. So I'm happy I took that chance. And then the next year, right afterwards, I decided to double or nothing my mistake. And I took another coding class, which was significantly harder than the first one. And I had a different teacher who was not so lenient, and I won't say she wasn't nice. She's very nice. I still remember her name, and I had fun with her. And she also spent a lot of time outside of class trying to help me, because she realized that this was just not my strong suit at all. Like, I was struggling. So bless her heart. But I doubled down to see, like, let me make sure, because by the time I took it, it was in junior year, at least in America. That's when, you have the SATs and ACTs, and that's when on those tests, you even have to declare, like, right at the start, like, what major do you think you want to go into? And I remember that year I had to write down undeclared, because by that time nothing was sticking. I couldn't find any classes that I enjoyed. I didn't enjoy anything. And that feeling, especially mixed in with the fact that I doubled or nothing on another coding class and hated it, really left me feeling a dread for the future in terms of my own personal happiness, in a sense, or dreading what I would do with my life moving forward. I didn't have my own direction. I didn't know what I wanted to get into. Nothing was interesting. And because I didn't find anything interesting, I just didn't enjoy anything. I didn't push myself through anything. I had essentially no real motivation for any profession I could think of that you kind of need to think about for when you decide to start applying to colleges. Because junior year is when you usually should start knowing, like, this is what I want to do. And you start looking for colleges and which ones are the best, and let's do college visits and everything. I had next to nothing, but I did do one thing that I lucked out on. I talked about it before in another episode, I believe, but I got into art. I got into art as a way to alleviate stress from my life, and I kept with it. I was always sketching and doodling on sides of papers and things like that, just keeping my hands active. So I think the same semester that I took a coding class, I took an art class at my school, because they had only a handful of them, but there was one that I was able to take, and it fit within my credits. I actually needed the class for my credits anyway, so I was like, oh, this is beautiful. I can just go take an art class and see if this is the thing for me. And I would have to say, I believe that art class is the first and only time that I truly applied myself, because I wanted to, in a field that I chose. So I used to apply myself all the time growing up, reading. I used to read a lot. I used to really like math, so I used to apply myself in math and always take advanced courses and all this. But those are things that were more put on to me, essentially. I grew up in a household where I was urged, if not essentially required at times, to read. And I'm surrounded by books. So it was just something that came second it was just easy for me to pick it up. It was in my familiar culture, essentially. And in the same sense, my parents spent a lot of time tutoring my brother and getting his love for math and computer science up. So a lot of my interest growing up was simply because it was either solely because my older brother was into it, or they made him teach me it, to be quite frank. Like, I asked him about computer science and he willingly taught me some things. But for math wasn't a question. My brother has been tutored me in math starting from like the age of 3 or 4, and he's 4 grade levels above me. So I've always would see something, and at the time it would like blow my mind out the water. And then about 2-3 years later, then I start to see what he was doing. I'm like, oh, so that's what you were doing. Like, I recall being in about 4th or 5th grade, and he showed me algebra. I saw the letters, and I think even like 10-year-old, 11-year-old, however old I was at the time, me literally looked at him and said, why the fuck are there letters in your math? Like, what's the point? And he broke it down and he explained it to me, and he actually taught me algebra, and he continued to teach me algebra, and it started to make sense. But that's where my love for mathematics came from, because it wasn't even love at that point. It was just the fact that I was urged to continue into it, and I was good at it. So I just naturally excelled, and that's what made me believe that I liked it. High school, that all came crumbling down. But the art class I took, I found love there. I found a lot of love there. Because just being left with my own tools and seeing how you can give a group of people one prompt and see all the random different ways people interpret it, and learning about abstract art and art history. Went over a lot in that class. And I also learned I can't paint if my life depended on it in that class. But it taught me a lot, and I love the class. Like, to this day, I can still email my art teacher that I had then and just ask her questions about art, because she used to be an artist, she used to be an art teacher in many places as well. And it was like an older lady. Like, I think she was in her 50s or 60s at the time, and she still remembers my name. And I think she remembers my name, one, because I was so happy to be in her class. I never slept in her class. She was the one class I never slept in, never made the conscious effort to sleep in. And on top of that, I believe I'm the only person, at least in my class, and maybe in the last couple of years, to come out of that school a dedicated illustration major. I know one person in my class, she actually declared as an architecture major, and she still is actually an architecture major. I think that's very cool. But I was one that was into, like, I guess, quote unquote, art, because I loved it. I found passion, I found drive there, and being in her class and like actively trying to work harder and harder to make better art, and taking her criticism and a group criticism to heart and trying to figure it out and do better. That time period, especially with some of the other art classes I took on the side while I was doing the same thing, it's one of the only times in recent years where I felt true passion and fire and hope for my future. Because next time I took standardized tests or was asked to declare, I found what field of art I wanted to be in: digital art, digital illustration. Wrote it down on everything, never stopped talking about it. Persevered through the countless amount of conversations I've had with friends and other teachers about, like, are you sure you want to get into art? Is that really what you want to do? Are you sure you're ever going to make money? Does that field even pay? Dealt with all of it because it was a burning fire. I felt my future there. And then it all came crashing down in that regard, at least, because there's 2 parts to it. When it all came crashing down, when COVID hit. Because when COVID hit, between COVID and not getting any scholarships because my GPA in high school went down very drastically, due to me literally not trying and due to my poor mental health at the time. We eventually decided that I should just take a gap year from school. So I didn't go to school. I didn't go to college for about a year. And during that time period, it truly tested just how much I enjoyed making art, because I loved making art when it was on demand, and I loved making art when I felt like I needed to release something. But when neither of those two things were present, I did not create. I did nothing. I just sat there stagnant. And I essentially spent that entire year like doodling and sketching every now and then, every couple weeks, and still deciding that and then still saying, yeah, I still want to go to school for art. Which was still true, because after a year passed, I actually did enroll into an art college. And once again, I felt happy because I had the sense of urgency to create allowed me to create. And there were so many things, and the school was so beautiful, and I enjoyed talking to people and seeing their works. It was amazing, but it was also very short-lived, because I only went to college for about a semester. Because after the first semester, I enjoyed that entire first semester, even the weirder classes and the weirder people. Enjoyed everything, even if it was online. Enjoyed everything. And something about that winter time, I don't remember what it was, but we were on winter break, and we come back for the beginning of the second semester of my freshman year. And I got hit with like this disgusting amount of dread, and I started to panic and lose sight of the future, and everything in my head, everything that I was loving to do, it all started to crash down. And eventually, between that type of uncertainty and realizing how much of a financial stress going to school was going to be for me, because I chose to go to a very prestigious art school, I dropped out. I dropped out within the first month of my second semester, and I'm happy I did, quite honestly. Or at least I did it so fast, because I got 50% of my tuition back, which was a pretty hefty amount, quite honestly, because even with not living on campus, financial aid due to income, and taking reduced credits, each semester was about $10,000 to $12,000. So in those 6 months I was enrolled at the school, I was expected to pay $24,000 for a diminished experience there, and it turned to $18,000 because I got 50% of my second semester tuition back, and I managed to pay it all off. It's already all done, thank God. But after dropping out, it was right back to the same desolate pit that I found myself in 3 years before. I didn't create because there wasn't urgency, and I didn't create because there wasn't anything in my head. I just felt blank. And on top of that, I wasn't sure what I was going to do with my future anymore, because that was the one thing, a Hail Mary, if you would. It was everything to me, but at the same time, I realized that I was putting up there was too much risk involved with chasing it, or at least in that regard. So I had to take a pivot. But in my pivot, I found myself in just a mental pit, essentially. I didn't know what to do, because I just didn't want to create. There was just the passion wasn't there anymore, or at least for the moment, and the spurts were too long to say that it's really something that I wanted to keep going with, because it was something that I really, truly loved. I would see how much my peers around me at college would draw. They could draw. It would have took them 1 week, one bad week, to basically produce more sketches than I've ever made at the time. and it would take them only 1 month to match me in how many finished pieces I had at the time. They were a different level, and a level that I couldn't even come close to replicating, even with my passion. They had just so much more going for me. And I think that realization also made me very uncomfortable with being there. And that's not to say that it's their fault by any means. It's never their fault. But I saw competition and I got scared. I started to even question how I even got into the school. Everything fell apart. And once I dropped out, I was met with the same question. What now? Essentially, what am I going to do with myself? And quite honestly, that is still a question that I have to deal with on a daily basis. I'm still very fearful for my future, but it comes because I desire such a level of control on my life, but at the same time, I cannot achieve that level of control if I lack the passion. Simply put, I still love to create. I do. I try to immerse myself in many different creative avenues all the time, but I don't find one thing and stick with it, and there's nothing really that makes me passionate. I think about other jobs and professions. Nothing sticks. I don't want to do something I don't don't want to do, but at the same time, I don't know what I even want to do. And that makes me scared. That makes me very scared for my own future. Especially to just see other people either taking paths or literally creating paths for themselves all around me. All of my friends that I grew up with or met, they're all on their own paths, and they've been on it since I've met them. None of my friends have really switched majors or anything. They're all just blazing through their life, and that's another form of competition that makes me even more anxious and hungry to figure out what the hell I'm doing with myself, because it feels like I don't know if I'm just getting left behind, or I'm letting myself be left behind. But I feel behind. I have drive for things, but it's just not strong enough. Essentially, it's not strong enough, and the fact that it's not strong enough just makes me scared and confused, because what am I gonna do then? Like the amazing question people ask you about goal setting and things, or just want to know where you are mentally about what you desire for your future. They'll ask you the age-old question: where do you see yourself in 5 to 10 years? I can't answer that. I can't answer that question. I can give you vague little tidbits about where I'd like to be, but if you ask me how I get there, I can't answer it at all. And I'm late to that answer. I know it. I'm still very late. Or I feel like I'm late. You can always change. There's always capacity to change. Who you are today isn't who you are tomorrow. What you're interested in now, you might not be interested in later. I understand that. I've seen it happen. But I just have some immense drive to just figure it all out now, to the point where I can't reason not knowing exactly what I want to do. And I want to do something that I want to do. I don't want to be stuck just working jobs that are available just for the cash flow, even though I don't want to, or hate it, despise it, whatever negative words you want to choose. I don't want that to be my life, but at the same time, all arrows are pointing towards it might be what I have to do, because I lack it. I just lack the motivation. or something's up with it, and I'm aware of it, dangerously aware of it. I'm not doing enough to really fix it. For an interesting thing, lately in my quest to investigate the areas that I feel like I'm lacking in that regard, to try to do better, I remember hearing someone saying that both persistence and creativity can be exercised like a muscle, or something similar to that. And I thought about it, and I realized that it's very true. For like, even with it's a somewhat popular phenomenon, at least around my friend group and people I've went to school with. But there's this thing that we call gifted kid burnout, which is seeing someone be like, top ranking, top class when they're younger, and then all of a sudden it all just kind of seems like it crashes. People wonder why. There's a lot of things that can play into it, quite honestly. It's never one answer when it comes to those type of things. But when I think about myself, I realized that my persistence started to fade and get weaker because I wasn't training myself to be persistent. I went from someone who was hell-bent on getting work done early and scouting out to see how much I could get done as soon as possible, being on top of everything, figuring out, even if it meant taking a suboptimal route just to get it done, I will figure it out as fast as I can, to someone who procrastinates to the last minute and constantly gets distracted and allows himself to be consumed by the benefits and the pleasures of the moment instead of the potential payoff in the future. And I've been sucked into that cycle. I realize I've been in that cycle for about 3-4 years. Those 3-4 key years of my adolescence has left me with a form of operation that will only continuously bite me in the ass as time goes on, because I can't do anything. I can't confidently and consistently perform with the way that I have conditioned myself growing up. I need to stop doing what I have been doing, and usually when it came to the intense amount of procrastination, it was the idea of getting comfortable with things can be done later. I stopped caring to see it through. Some things I was just like, it went from trying to succeed to just trying to get it done. And even if it didn't get done, I didn't care too much. I let things pass me. I would get wrapped up in whatever seemed interesting in the moment, to the point where I would lose sight and lose my grip on the things that would actually keep me afloat. It was like an shiny moment for me, basically. This looks interesting, and I would chase it even if it took me off a ledge. And then I fall off the ledge and wonder what went wrong, and I didn't learn. And now I'm learning. Now I'm moving my way back into building the persistence and the focus that I used to have when I was younger. And then on top of that, how can I keep building on it? Because I don't like the fact that I'm afraid of the future, quite honestly. It's not a good feeling. Like, I have some goals that are written down, planned out, which is very helpful. Writing down your goals for the future, giving yourself a time frame for each of them. They're very nice. But I still haven't created or have discovered the path that I actually want to take for my life, or at least for the next couple years, couple months. It still feels like I'm drifting in a way. I just kind of do little one-off things because I feel like it, but I'm not dedicated to one thing, one craft, something that will be sustainable. It will actually allow me to feel very confident about the future and looking forward. And that's my main fear for the future. And as with the question I asked earlier, it's something that I do feel to an extent, but I would just love to talk about it anyway. Fear of things that don't involve you necessarily, because everyone will feel that existential dread of what they have done, and do they think it's the correct thing? Is it really what they want to do? Midlife crisis, or just general discomfort with what's going on? I think that's slightly understood. Unfortunately, a lot of people have to go through that feeling. But in a general sense, because I used to be this way, I used to just be scared of the future because it felt like the world was collapsing around me, or just fear of certain events that feel inevitable or are. For example, losing family members and losing friends. And I feel like those are really the two big things outside of just being afraid of your own death. But the fear of losing friends and family is also one that holds people back, and rightfully so. I mean, those are legitimate concerns, and unfortunately, there's not too much that can be done, and those feelings are accelerated depending on some information that is brought to light as your life goes on, and as their life goes on. You know, there's always a fear, and the closer that you get to realizing that some things in life are limited, the more the fear starts to control people. And I didn't understand it too. I understood it from a variety of standpoints. Like, growing up, when I was younger, the more I got older, the more that I realized the things that were going on in my household were getting increasingly bad. And they got pretty bad, to be honest. I do recall during my freshman year, I went from only living in one household that was in some bad conditions to I would alternate going between my mom's and my dad's house, and it stayed that way for about a year, I believe. But during that time, all the tension that led up to one of my parents moving out to just finally being in that moment, I felt fearful. And it's a fear because something out of my control was rocking my world. At the time I was like 13. I don't know anything. Don't have a job, don't have money. I'm completely dependent on my parents at this time. But everything around me was just shaking very violently. It made me uncomfortable because I didn't know what was to come next. I don't know if I should sit here and overthink and try to prepare myself for what's going on next. Should I just try to close my mind and just assume something bad will happen and just prepare myself to tuck and roll with whatever punches are thrown at me? Do I try to see if I can fix it? Do I just run from the problem? And that's fear for the future as well, in many things. Whether you run away from home or you run away in the sense that you feel like you're so stuck in a scenario that you can't deal with, to the point where you just, kill yourself. Quite honestly, I've seen it. RP, my friend, because around that same time, they were experiencing a lot of things at home and just in their life, and all the fear came up, and it consumed them. Too many fears. Then tomorrow looked so bleak, so distant, so confusing that my friend decided to dive into the pit of the unknown than to try to wait out and see what tomorrow might bring them. And I'm not even gonna say the word. I'm not gonna say the word blame. It doesn't make sense, dude. There's no something to blame. They made their choice, and while I wish they were still here with me, they made their choice, and I'm gonna respect it, and I'll keep them in my memory, just like I've been doing since that day happened. The fear for their future just overshadowed them, and it consumed them. And just in similar sense, or just to take a step back from that, just fear, even if it doesn't directly involve you, you know, it doesn't have to necessarily agitate your current living situation, but you might just be fearful of something that's to come. And I saw it firsthand more than anything, because I'm talking to my friend about how they're feeling, and I'm trying to console them, and I felt fear for the future because I didn't know if they would still be here with me or not. 2 years down the road, it finally gets revealed to me, even though apparently the diagnosis was known a year beforehand. My grandma was diagnosed with a form of cancer. I believe it was breast cancer, but I honestly don't know if they even told me, and I don't know. But she had cancer, and they mentioned it to me because it became very clear that she didn't have too much time left. So we started to really, spend more and more time at grandma's house, which I love. She was always doing her best to be herself. That now that I put two and two together, even though she was diagnosed with it and people knew, I couldn't even tell. She always seemed like bubbly grandma. Only thing that I can think about now that really shows the difference is that she lost a lot of weight during those last couple of years she was with me. But somehow I didn't find peace because I was still torn apart when I lost her. But when I heard it, if anything, the only thing I felt was I was scared because I didn't know when it was going to happen. I was scared because I love my grandma. Every time I go there, I love to spend time with her, eat breakfast with her, clean around the house with her, go shopping with her. I stuck around her as much as I could. So I felt fear because I knew it finally dawned on me this insanely bright light in my life is going to actually disappear relatively soon. I didn't let that hold me back, at least in her case. I couldn't. The only thing that was focused on my mind was I've been blessed with the opportunity of at least knowing when I'm going, that my time with someone is a lot more limited than I've been thinking. Because if there's anything that basically everyone says when they lose someone close to them was, I wish I could have done more with them, changed my final words to them, anything like that. So knowing that at that time, I sprung into action and I made sure I spent a lot of time with her. That way I could diminish the fear, because in her present, it wasn't like the fear of losing her anymore. It was more time I spent with her, the more I started to actively document, my time with her and talk to her and learn about her life. The fear, it was always there because I didn't want it to happen, but it did make me feel a little bit whole, made me feel warm, because now it wasn't just, this is grandma, Grandma Hazy, basically. And she, tries to force feed you a bunch of sweets and spoils you and all that. I understood who she was and why she does the thing that she does and everything. So the future, knowing her now, knowing more about her, and those that final year I got to spend with her, help me know that the future will be okay without her. But I do wish that she was still here. But I only known her for a relatively short period of time in my life. I saw my grandma about once or twice a year, every single year, and I lost her when I was 15. So I saw her outside of like random visits and everything. I probably have seen her for a grand total of about 40 to 50 trips, not days, trips throughout my life. My dad, on the other hand, that's his mom. He's known her and talked to her, and she's been there for him way more than I could ever imagine. And I've seen it even throughout the years, even in the years past when she passed away. I can see that I saw the instability start to show itself, because his greatest fear in life finally came true. Because he was, my dad still is. There's no point in saying was, he is. He's a mama's boy. He loves his mom to pieces. And she did a lot for him. But as a result, once it finally dawned on him as well, the true mortality of the situation, it was his greatest fear for the future. And it was finally looking him in the eyes. And even to this day, it's been a couple of years since that day. That type of demon still follows him around, and it follows me around, because that moment truly also set in 100% the mortality of life. And you always feel it, you always hear it, you always feel like you understand it. And in my dad's position, just due to age, as you get older, death just it occurs, unfortunately. So he's had his fair moments of losing people throughout his life or hearing about death, but it really does just take that one hit for it to all finally come together, for you to finally realize that, oh, death really is around the corner a lot, and it strikes fear. Because once you lose that one person, or that one domino falls, it's domino effect. It's a snowball. You start to worry about everything, because now that you have been put in the scenario, you can never truly prepare for it. Once you're put into it, you spend a lot of time trying to figure out what would you do differently, and it just consumes you, stresses you out. So, in a sense, with like my grandfather, because he's still alive, my dad spends a lot of time with him, which is a good thing always, but you can tell that the emphasis on it has definitely been very heightened in recent years since my grandma's passing, because that was his moment for him, where he realized that life is very fragile, and I can see him making a lot of plans for his own case if he should have passed away. Mortality is my dad's greatest fear for the future, and it makes sense to me. I don't feel it though. It makes sense to be afraid of the future, and it makes sense to be afraid that one day you won't be here. But I think I take a more leisurely approach. Leisurely, I cannot say that. What is wrong with me? I take a carefree approach to how I see it. Because usually when it comes to that type of fear for the future, or just fear for the future in general, you are either afraid of what you need to do, or you're afraid of what you could have done. And fear of death, in your own case, is usually stems from feeling either uncertain about what lies after life, or you feel like you just won't get everything that you want to get done with your life accomplished before your time is here. I don't feel that too well though. I don't feel it strongly at all, quite honestly, because I think I have come to the point where I recognize I don't really think you'll ever hit a point where you feel like you've done everything, because as humans we always strive for more. So I don't even see it as I could have done X, Y, and Z. Just celebrate what's been done after it's done. Don't be sad because it's over. Be happy that it happened. That type of feeling also got me through considerable grief with losing my friend and losing both my grandmothers, and even just with failed friendships, my relationship that fell apart due to my own issues. I'm so happy that it happened. I am sad that it all came to an end, but I'd rather focus on what came out of it as opposed to just wanting more and more in that case, because it won't get me anywhere. The anger and feelings that I might have because I wanted to accomplish more before I pass away, or I wanted 10, 20, 30 more years with my grandparents or my friend. That feeling's not going to change anything. It'll just leave me feeling angry and unaccomplished, and those type of feelings make an active detriment into what I can actually do right now while I have the time. So celebrate, keep them close, keep everything close and dear to you, but can't let it break you. In the same sense, even if you just have fear for the future and say that you don't really know what you're striving for, it's okay not to know, and you can always pivot. So you can find your motivation for your future and just trying a bunch of new things. There's something out there that makes your heart flutter, and for whatever reason you might have not found it. If you found it and you're not pursuing it, I'm not sure why. Maybe it's not financially sustainable. Understandable, because you need finances first and foremost. You gotta eat. But can you still do it on the side? Do it on the side, and if it's something that you could make a profession out of, push for it. Push for it anyway. If you're into art and you like to make art, keep doing it on the side, even if you need to work somewhere else as like a cashier or something to get your bills paid and spend your spare time pursuing what you actually enjoy. Keep pushing it, and if you see a moment where art might be able to pay it off, you might be able to combine those two. You have financial stability and the opportunity to pursue something that you enjoy. Run for the hills with it and see where it gets you. There's no reason not to. Quite honestly, in the grand scheme of things, life is always too short to not really do what you want to do. Always, really. You gotta make sure it pays off. You gotta make sure you can eat. You gotta make sure that it doesn't actively become a detriment in someone else's life, especially if it's someone that you care for. You don't want to throw everything into the wind just because you want to pursue something. If someone else's well-being is in the mix, if you have kids, or you want to make sure that your parents are all good, significant other, friends, then maybe step back and make sure that you can still provide for them. But if it's just you, or you believe you can go for it, then run for it, because it'll make everyone happier. Or at the very least, it'll make you happy. And that's all that matters. If there's anyone that is always going to be here with you, it's yourself. The future doesn't have to be so scary. But I'm scared.